James Hammer, 1320 Kings Insider and creator of the Kings Beat, always in mid-season form here when he joins us Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 o'clock. So I just saw a new piece posted at thekingsbeat.com. So I'll ask you, read anything interesting today?
There was a suitcase in that one.
Boy, that's that there's so much in that little blurb.
There was a lot. It almost felt like someone packed really, really well with like packing cubes, and then just like each little cube had something new to discuss. Yeah, there was a lot in there. And this is it's the theater of the NBA draft. We're entering the third act. This is when things get absolutely crazy, and I think we saw a little bit of everything in that piece. And I haven't caught up with you guys all day long, so I don't know how much you've discussed it, but
a lot.
Yeah, a lot.
We did leave some parts out. We didn't leave any pieces of the article out. We left, well, because it's out there. The Kings aren't Ivey's preferred destination. It's the first line of this write-up. Now, I haven't said this all day, but I think it's safe to say now, you knew that. You knew that particular line, because when we read that line, the first thing I could think of, the Kings aren't Ivey's preferred destination. Somebody told James the same thing.
Yeah, I don't.
Just out there, boy, they really just telling everybody Jaden Ivey is, and they're using a specific phrase of Ivey's preferred destination.
Yeah, I would say this too. Ivey isn't the preferred player for the Sacramento Kings. Like that. I mean, realistically, there is concerns about fit. There's massive concerns about fit. Like, you can love his athleticism, you can love his potential, you can think that he's going to be a star. At the same time, you have to be realistic that he doesn't shoot the three ball very well at all, which is what you need next to De'Aaron Fox. He doesn't play defense hardly at all, which is a huge issue. Some of that stuff can be worked out, but like, we're not talking about a guy who is like in the 75 percentile and he needs to get better to reach the 90 percentile at the NBA. We're talking about a dude who is in the 9th percentile in the pick and roll. And the NBA is nothing but pick and rolls. So, like, I think that should be pointed out. I also think, like, the lead to the story and the conclusion of the story are basically like machetes. They're just like, they're coming at you. You're dipping, you're ducking, and then you're like, okay, you went there. You went there again. Like, does every piece that is written about the Sacramento Kings have to say, and Vivek Ranadive chimed in? Like, no, it doesn't. Like, the fact that that's thrown in there, to me, at a certain point, it becomes a little disingenuous. Like, I don't know who it is that is running around saying, look, nobody knows what the Sacramento Kings are going to do. They didn't know last year. Everyone in their house, on TV, on a podcast, fell off their chair when Davion Mitchell was the pick. If anyone thinks that they know exactly what Vivek Ranadive is thinking, they are not telling the truth. That's it. They're not. And for that matter, it doesn't even matter what Vivek Ranadive, who he might prefer. That doesn't matter, because we heard that they preferred Mark Jackson. Mark Jackson is not the head coach of the Sacramento Kings. We've heard a lot of his preferences over the last 6 months. None of them. He preferred Doug Christie being the head coach when the interim coach when they let Luke Walton go. That didn't happen. So the front office is functioning. It's working. It's doing its job. And so for this, it's another one of those things. And here's the sneaky thing about that. That wasn't even about Jaden Ivey. Correct. That was about Keegan Murray.
Right.
So basically what you said there, you knew you were inciting Kings fans when you drop Vivek Ranadive's name. You know that that's what you're doing. You're like, pitchforks. Everyone go out there and grab your pitchforks. Like, Vivek's getting involved in the draft. Okay, but you also say that they don't want to take Jaden Ivey they don't want Jaden Ivey taken at number 4. So what you're basically saying is that you want Jaden Ivey to go number 4 or higher, but you don't want the Kings to take him. Well, the reality is the Sacramento Kings are sitting at number 4. So you give a list of names. You read the list of names of potential people they could trade with. That seems strange. Look at the list of names. Is there anyone missing off of that? Is there any other player on one of those teams that maybe should be on that list? And then, like, where's Malcolm Brogdon on that list?
Malcolm Brogdon, the CAA client?
Yeah. Oh, did you say Jaden Ivey, the CAA client? Or did you say
CAA client?
Or did you say Malcolm Brogdon, the CAA client?
Oh man,
I'm just wondering. I'm not sure what you said there. I'm like, look, that's what this time of year is about. It's about absolute chaos. And I'll point out, here's the last thing I'll say, like, to finish off this before you ask another question. They still have him going number 4.
Right.
After everything's said and done, after all the trashing, after all the chaos, after all the Vivek Ranadive and who doesn't want to play where and bad fit and trade for this guy, he's still listed at number 4.
Oh, because it's a bad look to have your guy put anywhere other than 4.
Well, to the Sacramento Kings. To the Sacramento Kings.
Can you confirm? Because I wasn't able to. Is Tyrese with CAA?
Yes.
Okay. That's
yes.
I don't think he has the same agents, like actual representatives, that Jaden Ivey does. But I think I couldn't find if they were both with CAA. Jaden Ivey, I think, has the exact same representatives that Rashawn Holmes has. So there's a web here of Tyrese, Rashawn, and now Jaden Ivey. And it's funny now that you pointed out that Malcolm Brogdon wasn't on
the list.
That list. Yeah. Do they represent John Collins also? Because he's not on this list either.
Yeah. See, I haven't looked that far.
I'll look. I got a homework assignment.
So look, and I'm going to say this too. This isn't me throwing shade at an agent, because like we saw it during the draft when Tyreek fell to number 12, right? This was very specific. Like they can say, well, we didn't engineer him to fall all the way to 12. They did engineer him to fall because they didn't like his fit in Atlanta with Trae Young. They didn't like his fit in Chicago because they had too many guards. They didn't like his fit in a bunch of spots along the way. They didn't like him in Detroit. So they did withhold medicals, which is mentioned. They withheld medicals. They didn't do specific interviews with specific teams in hopes that he would fall to a spot that is the best for him, right? And that is all that these guys should be doing. Put your player not on the best team. Put your player in the best position for them. And Sacramento was a perfect position for Tyrese Halliburton. The Kings did not. They had an open spot for him. He was able to make his name here and show his talents, play 30 minutes a night as a rookie, start as a sophomore. Like, those are things that you're trying to do for your client, because at the end of the day, even if he gets traded to Indiana, Indiana is now building around Tyrese Halliburton, and Tyrese Halliburton is now becoming closer and closer and closer to a max money player. That is what you should be doing for your clients. Put them in positions to succeed, and then second contract, third contract, if we got to get you somewhere where you can win, we'll do that. But for right now, let's get you in a position where you're going to make as much money as possible, you're going to succeed, and you're going to do, right for both of us, because they're making money off of what he does. And so, like, look, I don't blame anyone in this for any of it. I just, at a certain point, how many times do we need to bring up Vivek? How many times? And how do you make that statement that they might be, rising up Mike Brown's list? Really? Mike Brown is worried about Keegan Murray right now. He doesn't have anything else going on.
Well,
he's worried.
How about, Damian pointed out, the phrase might? What are you talking about?
Might be gaining steam.
Might? With what?
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
Mike Brown, you like Keegan Murray? I might. Cool. I'm going to run with it. My God, man.
I might want to play in the NBA as well. That minimum scale contract, I'm good.
James Ham's dreams to play in the NBA might be gaining steam here.
Might be gaining steam.
Might be gaining steam.
You just have to read everything with a critical eye. again, like critical theory is something I've studied, but also like you have to be able to like start tracking stuff, start looking at things and why is it being said? And then once you can unpack some of it, the layers of it start to melt away a little bit. And again, I don't blame anyone because this is the game. This is a game that they play, and these guys are all really, really good at the game. And that's talking about they are because
are they though?
I'll tell you this,
Like, are they
Kenny.
good at the game?
I look at that CAA client list, and I know for a fact that each one of the sports agents that have all those clients, each one of them is a millionaire. Look at their client list. They're doing their job. They're doing well. They're putting their players in positions to succeed. And
let me ask you a question. Maybe this is you guys will know the game better. If you get with CAA, can you how do you not become a millionaire? Like, it's not like, oh, they're just getting it from the mud. They're with CAA. They're with the big leagues. Like, you're going to win. That don't necessarily mean like.
Well, you're getting hired by CAA, so that's your.
So there's that.
Right. That's your hat tip right there.
Right.
Yeah. And as a player, you can be bad at basketball once you get to the league. Like there can be things where your game doesn't translate and there's nothing they can do to help you. I mean, I know for a fact the Kings have had multiple top 10 picks that get like let go by their agencies. No question. Yeah. I mean, they're guys that they think are going to be something. And when they aren't, like they clean up their client list pretty quick. Yeah. So they like to have the A-listers because the A-listers are what A gets you paid, but B gets you more A-listers.
Yeah.
So this is kind of what I'm seeing with all this. It doesn't seem like Jaden Ivey, his representation, I should say, want him to be in Sacramento. Doesn't seem like Sacramento is sold on having Jaden Ivey. Why would they get married anyway?
Because he might be a star. And if he's who you think is going to be a star at number 4 above anyone else, you have to draft him anyways. Because you can clear up all that other stuff later. Guys say all the time, "Oh, I don't want to go to Sacramento." Like, whatever. You get here, you love it. That like almost every player gets here. And they don't like the losing. They don't like everything else. They do end up falling in love with the city. They fall in love with the fan base. They fall in love with the vibe. Like it's a good place to live. That's why we all live here. It is a good place to live, and it's a good place for a young NBA player to not get in a bunch of trouble. They can go get in trouble on the road a couple of times a year, but like in Sacramento, it's a little more tame. You can live in a nice neighborhood, have a calm life, have kids, and not worry about your schools and all that stuff. I mean, when you're an NBA player making millions of dollars, you can do that almost anywhere, but Sacramento's a different vibe, and people do like being here. And like we've talked about this before, just because De'Aaron Fox is on the roster right now doesn't mean that De'Aaron Fox will be on the roster 2 years from now. Like if that's where you project him to be, and you look at him and he's working out, and like you have, but then you end up with 2 players that are too similar, and it's just you're not winning because of it. Well, then you make the decision on who you're going to keep down the road. Like, and again, people keep saying, "Oh, it never works out." It worked out last year. Kings drafted Tyrese Halliburton. They drafted Davion Mitchell. They had too many guards. They traded Buddy Hield and Tyrese Halliburton for a 2-time All-Star and Domantas Sabonis. It does work.
Tyrese Halliburton, player of all time.
He's the greatest player of all time. Is that what you said?
If you pay attention to what people say, like Charles Barkley said he was the best player on the Sacramento Kings. JJ Redick, Kings insiders. JJ Redick said best player on the.
Yeah, locked in everything Kings.
I was amazing.
But let me ask this, because you said something that had me thinking a little bit. So you say, hey, De'Aaron Fox may not be here in 2 years. You can go ahead and make that decision and move on from him then. Well, James, if you're Monty McNair, you won't be making any decision in 2 years. If they're still losing and you got you pick Jaden Ivey and De'Aaron Fox, the next person can make that decision. But if you're Monty McNair and this doesn't work because they're a bad fit and you're still losing, you can help whoever in Minnesota is the GM at that time because you're going to be their assistant. You can help them figure out what they need to do. You won't be doing anything here in Sacramento. You're going to lose your job. So that's what I say when people, in theory, this Kings franchise, yes, if it doesn't work, you just move on and you can trade Fox or do whatever the case may be. But Monty McNair may not have that luxury.
Oh, I agree. Yeah, but that doesn't mean that you do something that's bad for the franchise. That's part of the problem here. Like you got to make sure that guys are under contract and all that stuff. But you want guys that like walk in with a pure heart and are going to do what's best for the franchise. And some of the times, like the edict of the franchise is to get there. That I don't think that that's what Monty McNair firmly believes. He wants to get there for sure to the playoffs, but that's coming down from ownership, and so you got to try to get there. And if you don't get there, you won't have a job very long. I totally agree with that. But at the same time, if you operate under that sort of like idea, that's not a good way. That's not going to reflect like correctly on yourself. And when you go to your next job, you lay down your portfolio and you say, this is what we were trying to do, and this is what happened. And this is why we did what we were trying to do. And this is what I was being told from people above me. So, like there are reasons and stuff like that. You just have to do the right thing here. And again, I don't know what the right thing is. Like he's the one who, McNair and Wes Wilcox, those are the guys who are fielding all of these calls and know what is on the table. None of us know what's on the table. Like we can have some ideas, but most of the ideas we're talking about are us looking at the roster of the teams that are right behind them and saying, okay, what fits, what doesn't? What would make sense to us? Well, what makes sense to us and what makes sense to them, two totally different things. Because, we're talking about, this is chess. It's not checkers. We can't just like think that they're going to be able to move like 14 times down the board and pick up a good player from every team. And all of a sudden they're going to have 17 guys on the roster that are all NBA players and studs. And, salary cap be damned and everything else be damned. We can figure this thing out. That's not the way it works. So, again, they have a whole list of what is on the table and what they can do and what they can't do. For what I read from that piece right there, it tells me that they're really hoping that the Kings move down one or two spots.
And Dame, let me just address something real quick and get James's thought on this one. Because somebody in the chat says, because I talked about how Monty will be fired if they feel like they have to trade Fox and Ivy 2 years down the road because they don't fit. And Rob Nacho1 in the chat says, same if you trade the 4 and Ivy is looking like a star. I disagree. If you trade the 4 and you make the playoffs for 2 years and Ivy looks like a star, Monty McNair's not getting fired.
Yeah, we had this discussion. Well, I'm not sure about that because if he does become a star and you passed on him, they're going to forget that you made the playoffs. They're going to be like, oh, look what you did. This is Luka all over again.
I disagree. I don't
know.
If Ivy goes to Indiana and he's looking great and they're in the play-in
with Tyrese,
and you've been in the playoffs for the last 2 years, would we agree with firing Monty McNair? Would the city of Sacramento agree with firing Monty McNair if he's gotten you to the playoffs the last 2 years? There's no way he's getting fired.
I would hope not, but like we got into a really long discussion on the Kingspeed podcast yesterday.
One of the best episodes you guys have ever done, by the way, that everybody should go.
What is success?
Yeah, well, and I think it's really complicated because we talk about like short-sighted, long-sighted, and like I have a really tough time thinking that trading for John Collins, who's 24 years old and under contract for 4 more years, is short-sighted. And I also know that he makes you a better team day one, where one of these draft picks, they don't make your team better day one. Now, the fact that he's not a superstar, I get it. But if you can guarantee me that Jaden Ivey's a superstar, then I can't trade that pick. But no one can guarantee me that. And again, like we talked to draft experts and everything else, like most people believe that in like historically, if you look at this draft and you think that, you have, your two guys at the top, Jabari and Chet. They're tier 1. Well, but in a historical draft, if you break it down, what that really is, if we take all of the drafts and you say, where would you put these players in in every draft? They're really more like tier 2. And the next tier is more like tier 3, tier 4. So these aren't players that you instantly look at and go, okay, he is the next Anthony Edwards, or he's the next Karl Anthony Towns, or he's, even like just all of them. There isn't a Luka in this draft. There is not a Anthony Davis in this draft. There might not even be a Cade Cunningham or an Evan Mobley in this draft. Like all of those guys, if you put this stack of players in last year's draft, where do they go? I tell you, they're probably going, maybe 1 or 2 of them would crack the top 5, but most of them are going like 3 through 10. They're not like head and shoulders above Scotty Barnes, and like there's a lot to like about him. So again, that's what I mean. Like, is it a gamble? Is it a gamble to trade out? And I'm not sure that it totally is, because we're not talking about like an 80% chance of this guy becoming a star. We might be talking about a 42% chance. Like that, like it might be something totally different than what we're thinking. And when we focus so much on a draft, we start to inflate players, and you start to like think of them bigger and bigger and bigger. And then their expectations, they get into the league and you're like, well, that's not what I thought he would be. It's usually a pretty harsh thing that happens. And then 2-3 years from now, maybe that's who they become. But again, like, I don't know how we project this draft, and it's nowhere near thought of as well as like next year's draft. Next year's draft has players at the top who are like game changers that people believe are like high-end all-stars or superstars at the top. And so, yeah, I mean, it's difficult. You got to manage all of these expectations, all of these thoughts when you're going through a draft board, when you're a general manager, and you have to have a contingency for every option possible. And at the end of the day, you still might get it wrong. And that's just the facts.
Do you think that they're weighing kind of what you just talked about, immediate impact versus star potential? Immediate impact, Brogdon, potentially, John Collins, potentially, Jeremy Grant, potentially, versus the star that Jaden Ivey might become, the star that Shaden Sharp might become.
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
can they afford to weigh that given
Yes.
the playoff edict?
Yeah, you can, because I think the way that I would look at it is this way. If you're looking at any one of those trades that you just mentioned, maybe John Collins, because John Collins is moving all the way back to 16. But if you're talking about moving back to 5, or you're talking about moving back to 6, you're still getting a good player. Your percentage of that player being great might go down, but that doesn't mean that they still don't have that possibility. I mean, like, would all 3 of us here, I think, would trade the number 4 pick and, I don't know, 2 years from now, pick and Harrison Barnes, and throw in a couple other players for Donovan Mitchell right now, right? He's the 13th pick in the draft. Like, just because these guys are at the top end of the draft doesn't mean that there's not going to be someone else who becomes like much, much better than what you expected. And there are players with that potential, just like in every draft. There will be a better player at number 10 through 20 than there is at 5 through 10. That's just the way it almost always goes. But, who thought that some of the players from last year's draft would be as good as they were? I mean, I love Josh Giddey. I told you guys about Josh Giddey like the whole time. I thought he would be a stud. I didn't think he would go that high. I was more thinking he'd be a stud at like number 10 or number 9 or number 12. I thought he'd be a really, really good find. Well, he could be an all-star. Like, I think there are a bunch of guys. Franz Wagner can be an all-star.
I don't know why the Kings didn't take him.
Well, possibly because he wasn't there.
I know. Don't tell anyone that, though.
Don't tell anyone that. Yeah.
Boy, best you guys wish you had taken Franz Wagner now.
Yeah.
That comes up at least once a week.
Once a week.
During the season, once a week.
Yeah, totally. And again, like when we go through things like this, when we're looking at this report, like, I'm not going to bash the writer because the writer's hearing intel,
Mm-hmm.
and he's comparing that intel to other things that he's hearing. I guarantee you he's hearing some things from other people. He's meshing in 3 or 4 people's takes with one take, and kind of playing it out. And he throws in there, oh, but there's an executive told him this. Like, I have a hard time believing that a competing general manager is telling him what he thinks that the Kings are gonna, who they would trade for or who they wouldn't. Like, and if they are, they're trying to drive down the price in some way or another.
I'm gonna pause you right there, James. And I'm not gonna bash Jonathan Givony.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do that. But there is a level of heat that needs to come his way when we decipher all this. This was, to me, how I read it. And you can tell me if I'm wrong. This was not, let me get bits and pieces from everybody that's telling me. This was an agency telling him, he did the dirty work for the agency. Absolutely did the dirty work. All the way down from the people that are potential trade partners. You named them, all certain clients of a certain group, or not certain clients of a certain group, all the way down to Vivek's name for no reason being put in there. That entire piece was him doing the dirty work for an agency. So I'm not going to look at him as like, oh, he's just doing his job. Maybe that is part of his job, but that's what he did.
Yeah, I mean, like, if I'm really, really looking at the thing, the biggest issue that I have with the entire piece is the might. That one word. That is the biggest issue, because I think people will tell you, oh yeah, Vivek likes him. Okay. Like, again, that doesn't really matter. All you're doing there, again, if you look at the way that is structured, it's to throw shade at Keegan Murray at number 4. That's how that reads. Like, oh, this guy and this guy and this guy might like Keegan Murray, and the owner might like Keegan Murray too. But they don't want Keegan Murray going number 4. You go back and read the thing. Like, no one in that piece wants Keegan Murray going number 4 and Jaden Ivey dropping to 5. I mean, that's a couple of $1 million over the first 4 years that you're losing. Yeah, so I mean, I think it's interesting. Like, totally.
But you can tell me in this if I'm wrong in this one, because that whole thing, Damien, you can too. That whole thing reads as he got people at CAA or whatever that say, I need you to do this, Jonathan. And he did it.
Yeah.
I
don't know either.
That's tough. Like, I get why you would read it like that. It could be less salacious and more of that's just who he talked to, and that's a person that he's had a good relationship with, and they hadn't led him astray. I don't know the dude. I just know it's not hard to connect the dots. Like, Jonathan, this is his time of year, right? Mm-hmm. I don't know who he's repped by. Can't lie. Trying to figure it out right now. But I know Adrian Wojnarowski's repped by CAA. Mm-hmm. So that's not a difficult, line to connect. But it's also it could be not nearly as salacious, where he had connections at the agency. He called to pick their brain, and this is what he found out.
It's fair.
And it could be, rather than, hey, we want you to write this. Hey, I got a scoop for you here. Let me fill you in on this. It could just be as simple as that's the information he was given, and that's how he wrote it.
But I would counter that by saying, and maybe this is just too much work for a mock draft. I can understand that too. Like, it's not that deep. But why are you getting one source of information?
Well, that's mock draft next week. That's the big finale mock draft before the draft.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, like, I've like, some people out there, I don't. It's like 3 people who like think that I'm making something up when it comes to Dante DiVincenzo not being happy.
It's literally one person.
It is, but I went and had multiple conversations with multiple people and waited for things to figure itself out. And when it didn't, I still had the story and I ran with it. But I waited. I waited to see if things could happen. And that's not because, like, it's because I like to be fair and give the process time to work out. When it was very clear that he was not playing, that he was not going to start, like, then I had to run with the story. And again, I had conversations on multiple fronts, not just one front, multiple fronts. And that's the story. It is what it is.
Yeah.
We'll talk more with James Ham about all of this. We mentioned the tremendous episode of the King's Beat that is available for you right at 4:00 on the dot for you to listen to. We want to talk about some of the things that you and Sean and Brendan talked about. We'll talk more about that line there at the end of this paragraph regarding Vivek Ranadive. We'll do all of that when our 1320 Kings insider James Ham returns with us here on Sacramento's #1 sports station, ESPN 1320. Clear.
Dr. David, breaking news on Twitter. James Ham may want to play in the NBA. #
Be ready.
Hell yeah, man. I'm game. Hit me. Minimum deal. Minimum deal is $980,000, I think, this year. Sheesh.
Damn.
I'm in. I'll take it.
It's not a bad gig.
No.
Bad.
I mean, you got some of these dudes who last forever and never play at all. You're just how long is the dude on the Heat? Udonis Haslem, yeah. Like, what's he played for?
He hasn't played in about 7 years.
22 years, but what's his career earnings are going to be like $142 million. You're like, what in the world? How did that happen? Yeah.
I'm trying way too hard to see if Jonathan Givony is repped by CAA. I just can't I'm obsessing over it. I feel like
Yeah, see, again, it's not my job to be media police. Like, when I'm on the radio with you guys, like, I do wear different hats, but, like, as media, 65,500,000 for Udonis Haslem.
Not
But
bad.
yeah, so I always think of it that way. Like, I'm not here to be media police. But at the same time, when I see something that's like, I don't like the structure. I don't like the way it was written. Like there's a very strict structure to the way he wrote that. And at the same time, he still has him going to the Sacramento Kings at number 4. Like, so, hopefully we figure it all out in the end.
Well, there's nothing to figure out. A week from now, a name is going to be called when the Sacramento Kings traded 4, or it's going to be traded. Like, there's nothing for us to figure out.
No, that's true.
They got to figure it out.
Yeah, they do.
And that's the part that you just hope, no matter what you think about all of this, that they do.
Yeah.
You hope they figure it out.
I did not expect the podcast went off its rails a couple of times yesterday. But like the discussion on media availability, that was supposed to be
The
like
beginning was really good. Yeah, that was really
it was
good.
supposed to be like 5 minutes. It was not supposed to drag out for like an hour. Well, for like 30 something.
It didn't drag though. Like, it was good. There was no dragging out. Like, that was a good listen, especially because what are you watching?
It's damn Giants game. This guy keeps turning on Leon's pitches and hitting them into the water.
Oh, well, that's unfortunate.
Luckily, they were both foul, but come on, bro. He put it in the same spot. He's hitting it in the water every time.
It was interesting hearing Brendan's, because you and Sean are in such a different spot than Brendan, and the questions asked. Yeah, like I just imagine Brendan like looking up at the teachers in class watching like this as you guys were laying out what's going on is such a tough look.
Yeah, and I've had conversations with Inside too. I mean, like, part of it is they just don't have the staff, but that's not enough. That's not enough of a reason. Like, you're just missing an opportunity. Like, and the worst part is, like, I just got the email from the NBA. Like, we're getting all of the top prospects. Like, we're getting a Zoom call with all of them. So whatever they think that they hid
from the league, not from the Kings, from the league.
Not from the Kings. No, from the league. So whatever they think that they hid, we're getting like a Zoom call with them in the coming days. And so Thursday, Friday, Monday, and Tuesday. On Thursday, Keegan, Jabari, Osman Deng, and Benedict Mathurin. On Friday, Shaden Sharp and Abaji, Jaden Ivey on Monday. Like, we'll be able to ask these questions. So what did you hide it for a couple extra days? Like, I don't know.
Well, and so here's what I will say on the other side. You can tell me. It seems as though a lot of this, like all this stuff that's going around with people visiting, it's happened this week.
Sorry,
Well, go ahead.
Casey, hang on.
Well,
D'Lo and KC brought to you by McQueen and the Violet Fog, the smoothest gin in the world, handcrafted in Brazil. We're live on Twitch, YouTube, live on Facebook. We're live on the Odyssey app, live on 1320 a.m. Wherever you are, we appreciate you for being with us. James Ham is live with us, the creator of the Kings Beat, in our 1320 Kings Insider. We've been praising most of the day the fantastic episode of the Kings Beat that you, Sean, and Brendan posted yesterday, which if you haven't heard it, you should absolutely tune to it at 4:00. It's great stuff. And listening to you and Sean get so animated about, and you've talked about this before here on this show, but having Sean's perspective on it, I just thought was wonderful about the lack of availability towards from the draft picks and the impact that potentially has on fan interest and fans getting to know that player. I just thought was so valuable. And this being the first time that you guys haven't been able to do that, I think it's made draft experts out of all of us because we don't get that insight into different players. We don't get to hear how some of your conversations went with those guys. We just go to film and determine that our expert eyes, well, this guy comes off the pick and roll too slow. He's not going to be good.
Yeah, I mean,
Does all a disservice.
Yeah, we don't watch like every single. We don't get to watch hardly anything of draft prospect workouts. It's the same thing that we don't get to watch practice. We don't get to watch shoot around. We get to watch what happens afterwards when the guys are all hanging out. You get to see camaraderie. You get to see guys shooting 3-point shots. You get to see whether someone's healthy or not. But typically at a day of practice, we get the head coach, whoever that is at that point, because that's always changing. And then on top of that, we get like two players, and we can request players. Sometimes they say no. We can request one-on-ones. Sometimes they say no. When it comes to the draft, it's very similar, except for the coach doesn't talk, and we usually get like 2 or 3 of the prospects to come over and hang out with us and sit with us and chat. That's where you get to like stand next to Taco Fall and just say, oh my gosh, like I cannot believe how huge you are. Or Lou Dort, when he comes through and you're like, okay, I need to do a lot more research on this dude because I literally think he can lift up the front of my minivan and like do like just bench press it. Like you're looking at the players in a different way. You're seeing how they somehow separate themselves. You know how functional they are, and like how good they are at talking to the media. You know, like we've taken some. I've seen some pretty bad interviews with players and some good stuff. Like I think the team also. Like, they ask these players a bunch of questions, right? Well, if they think that we're going to ask those same questions and you can't glean anything from the way that they respond to us, then you're not doing your job. You need to be watching that as well. Someone's media presence is as big as half of the other things that they do, like the way that they conduct themselves, like how they represent you and your city. And so I just think it's a missed opportunity. And I wish it was different. I've had like guarantees that they're going to try to do things differently next year. But again, the Kings lost both their media directors like right at the end of the season. One of them was let go and one of them decided to take another job. And so they are down their staff, but that I don't think that it's because of a staffing issue as much as it is they've like the guys that are running the front office have taken that as an opportunity because the other people that are there aren't used to going through this process. And so they've decided that this is how it's going to be handled this year. And that's fine. But again, like that doesn't mean that we can't call agents, that we can't call scouts, that we can't call people around the league, that we can't watch video from other people, like all this stuff that like it just makes everyone's job that much more difficult. And at the end, what is it for? Like, again, if you're worried we're going to guess who you're going to take at 37 or 49, man, they bring in 90 prospects and only 30 of them get drafted in the second round. You know, like 90 prospects that are like second round and undrafted guys. Like only 30 of them get drafted out of 90. And then on top of that, the Kings are taking 2 of them. So how in the world are we supposed to figure out which 2 dudes you're going to draft by your draft workouts? There's no way. There is no secret sauce that we would see. It's just, it's their decision. But to be honest, it's where the basketball side and the business side clearly aren't on the same page, because if they were, the business side would be telling them the whole time, please let people in the door so they can talk about us. You're down to like 3 full-time media members covering your team, and you guys can't figure out a way to like be partners in this event here that is the draft, which is a huge seller. You should be the buzz in Sacramento about the number 4 pick should be off the charts. It's not.
But is part of that because fear of screwing it up, or I don't know. Like, I don't know what the poll would be or what the results would be if you posted a poll that said, "Hey, would you rather draft 4 with one of these young players that you've fallen in love with, or trade for John Collins or Malcolm Brogdon?" Like, anytime we bring up a John Collins name or a Malcolm Brogdon name or a Jeremy, you're going to get a split reaction either way, just like with the draft. Some will say Ben Mathurin, some will say Keegan Murray, some will say Jaden Ivey. Like, is part of it just there's this underlying fear? There isn't that big buzz because there's a fear. Screw this up again.
I guess so, but at the same time, that's not what the draft process is about. So, like a couple of years ago, they had a decently high pick. They had I think it was 21 out of the first round came through Sacramento. 21 players. This is about gathering intel. It's about learning about a player. Even if you don't draft him, maybe you see something you really like in somebody in a conversation, and 3 years from now or 5 years from now, he becomes available and you have this connection with him. That's what the draft process is about. It's about getting your hands on all these guys and really breaking them down and having good conversations and learning about them as people and players and seeing different potential, because
again, I understand that. That's from a team perspective, though. I thought when you said there should be a buzz here, I thought you were talking about from a fan perspective.
Well, of course there should be, but there's no buzz right now, because all I can tell you is that Dyson Daniels might come through on Friday, and that Jeremy Sohan came through this last week. Those are the only 2 guys in the top 10 that we know either have or will be through Sacramento. That's not a good thing. That's an embarrassment if that's all that's happened. That is embarrassing. And that's where I mean, when you have 19 or 21 of the top of the first round comes through your building in a pre-draft workout buildup, that means that you're doing something right, that people want to play for you, that people are competing for your spot in the draft. The fact that we haven't heard anything, I mean, they've gone to workouts. I know that they've gone to pro days and all that stuff. That's different. It's totally different. You want to see these players come through Sacramento, look at your facility, look at your lounge and your chef, and have lunch and dinner and figure out the city, get a little bit of a taste for the city, all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And maybe they've snuck in a bunch of guys. That's totally possible. But what I can tell you is that if we don't know that they snuck in anyone, and then at the end of the day, we're like, hey, did you really only have 2 potential top 10 picks through, and you had the 4th pick? Where's AJ Griffin? Where's Ben Mathurin? Where's all of these players? Oh, again, Dyson Daniels could be in that mix, but where are all these players that we're talking about? Where's Keegan Murray coming through, competing to go get that 4th pick? Because you got the 4th pick. People should want that. They should want to move up in the draft. Mm-hmm. But it's just a weird situation for sure.
Yeah, and like we keep saying, it was such a great conversation, and I found myself listening to it, and I had rebuttals, and I agreed, and all this other stuff. And one of the things you talked about was the buzz of this 4th pick, and I mean, I think the buzz is just fine. 4th pick in the draft. We do, you're on here with us a couple times a week. We're doing the radio show all day long. Numbers rise when we start talking about the Kings and the draft pick. Mm-hmm. I don't know if maybe they're supposed to be higher or whatever the case may be, but people are interested in this. I think even more so than that, it's a situation where they could be parading, whoever in here and plastering it for anybody. Don't nobody know these guys. Nobody know who Jabari Smith is. They saw him for 2 months.
Yeah.
Like, they don't know who Jaden Ivey is. They know him for 2 months. It's not back in the day when Dwayne Wade was a top 3 pick, or even further back when college was a different time. Corliss Williamson, John Wallace, all these guys. It's not that. So they're gonna see these guys come in, and okay, he came in, that's cool. But I think there's a buzz here still for what's going on with the number 4 pick.
I would like to see how many season ticket holders have signed up since, like, historically, and like when you had the 5th pick and in the weeks leading up to the draft and everything else, because that's really what I'm talking about. Like, look, this team needs to be out there. Like, the fact that, like, we're on the radio talking it, I'm on the podcast talking about it. Like, I think we're pretty close to it where we feel like there's a buzz. This isn't a normal buzz. You're not being talked about nearly as much. It should be a 3-day a week where we're doing draft prospect workouts and Sacramento Kings are being mentioned again and again and again. That's what it should be, and they're not. They're not being mentioned in that way.
You're talking about more like a national buzz. Okay, I got you. I think I'm starting to feel you a little bit more, because I'm thinking more like I kind of was thinking like what Kenny was talking about. We got some good conversations here around this, but
yeah,
it feels like outside of like every time we read something on the Kings, it's like silly.
Right.
Like it's like Vivek Ranadive likes Keegan Murray. Wait, what?
I told you, like, that's always a problem. You think that you're getting some buzz for your franchise because Woj tweets something out, but then, like, locally, it's guys like myself who and guys like us in this conversation that are driving home all of these things that are taking a side, that are crafting what is known as the narrative in the city about a pick or a player, or, you know, whether something was successful or not. Like, how many national people just lambasted the Kings for the Halliburton for Sabonis deal? Okay, that's fine. And then they stopped, and I kept covering the Kings and Sabonis and saw how good he was and kept writing about how well he was playing. Like, there's just a different, like, there's a misunderstanding about the buzz nationally and everything. I just think that, like, look, if people are talking about you every day and they're seeing video clips of guys working out for you and shooting, and, you know, all of a sudden you've got people in, you know, all over the United States who, you know, when the Kings draft Davion, you know, all of a sudden we got a bunch of people from Baylor that start following us. But when you have these draft prospects,
you got all of Portugal following you.
Yeah, all of Portugal follows me. I'd like, God bless Portugal. But, like, at the same time, like, the draft buzz is still the same. Like, you get a bunch of people from North Carolina, they're following you, or a bunch of people from Kansas or whatever school. They're all so engaged because those are their kids going out into the world and getting. So it just, like, makes you more of the conversation. And it goes back to the whole, you know, bad press is still press. No press is bad press. Yeah, no press is bad press. And, you know, the fact is, you got a handful of voices that are talking about you, not a bunch of prospects and a bunch of people nationally and everything else. So
I'll ask another question about that, though. Do you think it's a prospect thing? Because every time something is talked about with this draft, a lot of the times, you talk about moving in this draft, it's always with number 4. Always with number 4. The Knicks, the Pacers, OKC. 4. Always. And it's either OKC talking about moving, or they talk about trying to get the Kings pick. And a lot of people believe that the draft starts at 4. And I just think that that they're in the discussion. I do. I think as much as anybody can be for this particular draft class.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I mean, the fact that they have the number 4 pick does at least put you in some conversation. The fact that, like, I've said that from the beginning, like, this is the first pick that should be available. Like, number 1, 2, and 3, those teams are super bad and intentionally bad and are trying to get top 3 picks. That's their goal. The Kings are bad they don't but most of the time it's not intentionally bad. They just end up being bad. And they're usually around number 7, number 8, because that's what mediocre teams that are caught in the middle, the bad to mediocre teams that are caught in the middle do. The fact that they moved up to 4, I think it does open a door, because we do know that they just made a trade that changed the age trajectory of the team. So your 2 best players are 24 and 25, or 24 and 26 now. And so you changed everything where you kind of sped up your process. So I think it does. This pick, it should be available. But do we know that for sure? Because we thought last year's pick was available, and they were more than happy to sneak in and draft Davion Mitchell.
See, and I don't think that's a bad thing. Because I think the answer to the question you just asked is no, we don't. And I don't think that's a bad thing. I don't think we should know if it's available. Sam Presti should, or Raphael Stone should, or the different general managers across the league should. It's fun for us to talk about it. We don't need to know what's available and what's not. We just need Monty McNair to do the right thing for this organization and for this fan base 1 week from tomorrow night.
Yeah,
leading into it.
I agree. And that's what I keep saying. We don't know all the options that are out there. And we can talk about different options, and we can talk about the players. This is like any other draft for me. I just cover the prospects. I break down prospects the same way. We dive deep into the draft again and again and again. We talk about potential for this or that. What if the Kings move here? What if they stay there? What if they move up? What if they move out completely? All of these things are things that we talk about almost every single year. It's always the same. And I don't think being at number 4 makes it any different. I just think that the message from inside is so limited, not even what they're saying to us, but it's almost like they're just quietly not doing the draft. That's what it almost feels like. They're not participating in the draft. And again, when you're down to a handful of media members, and then you want to know why people aren't covering you, it's well, what am I supposed to cover? How about I just cover how all of your fans are watching the Golden State Warriors win another championship and not paying attention because you guys have decided to be irrelevant completely. And that's what I'm talking about. There's a relevancy issue here, and they're not taking advantage of a prime time to build the excitement for this coming season, where more eyes, not just the hardcore fan is watching, but more eyes are watching, and you're just missing that opportunity. So
I hear you.
Yeah, we had. I mean, again, we beat this thing up hard on the draft.
When you guys talked about the Warriors, though, stealing on your fans, I mean, it's just because they're winning. That's it. And this is what I would say, and I understand what you're saying, but the Kings go off next year. You mean to tell me there ain't gonna be no buzz about the Kings because everybody's a Warriors fan? Absolutely not.
You're gonna miss generations of fans. You're gonna lose a 10-year, a 15-year gap of kids who are now, 15 to 25 years old, who aren't Kings fans because the Kings have been so bad during their lives, and they don't want to do that.
Maybe so. I was a Bulls fan, and I was a Bulls fan in a major way. Love the Bulls. Love Michael Jordan. Love Scottie Pippen. When Pete Myers came in, I was watching WGN, and I was like, we're going to be all right. And when the Kings got good, guess who I was a fan of? At 13, 14 years old. I became a Kings fan. So it's all about the winning, baby.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. I hate having my 19-year-old ask me, at what point can I go choose a different team? And he's allowed to be a fan. I'm not allowed to be a fan, but at what point is he allowed to do that? And that's with the A's, the second that they relocate, we become someone else's fan. We're not going to chase some team. But with the Kings, it's hard. It's your hometown team, man. You gotta stick it out because eventually, but how eventually? I mean, he's 19 years old. The last time they were in the playoffs, he was 3. He never saw winning basketball.
Poor kid.
Yeah. I mean,
poor kid.
Yeah, it's rough.
Do you think that maybe they ramp up their stuff when Mike Brown, is here and is official? Do you think they do anything to, given the conversation we're having, it feels like the answer is no, but if, and I'm not confident they will, I'm not wavering from my Boston Celtics selection, but Warriors close out Thursday, close out Sunday. Mike's here next week. You think they take advantage of that? Like, yo, we've got a dude who just won his 4th NBA championship. Was just on his 4th NBA championship staff. Has been on the winningest franchise of the last decade and some change. Like, we've got something here. Do you think they build anything, or I don't know, build isn't the right word. Do you think they hype up Mike Brown a little bit when he gets here?
I hope so. I mean, I'm excited to go and hang out and meet Mike Brown. But, like speaking to the conversation here, from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock on Monday, I'll be watching draft prospect workouts Zoom calls. And if they decide that that's when Mike Brown is going to talk, good luck, Mike Brown. Like, I'm going to talk to you for the next couple of years.
Sunday, so I don't think he's going to talk Monday. They're playing Sunday. They got a game to play.
Yeah. Well, we'll see. But you understand what I'm saying? Like it's too late.
Warriors in 5. Was that you or was that Sean?
That was Sean. I had Warriors in 6.
Wait a minute. I know we got to go. You mean to tell me if Mike Brown have his introductory press conference, you would rather watch the draft Zoom calls over Mike Brown's introductory
I'll think about it, because I'm going to get more information there than I am from
James, no.
They wouldn't do that.
There's 6 prospects, including some of the guys that might go at number 4. Jaden Ivey. I need to ask Jaden Ivey if he's literally turned down the Sacramento Kings.
Are we a preferred destination? Jaden, this is all of Sacramento on the line here.
Yeah.
Entire city here. Are you a preferred destination?
I'm just saying, like, we've got a responsibility to cover everything, and I'm going to cover Mike Brown for the next couple of years. I'm going to get plenty of opportunities to talk to him. And again,
you may never cover Jaden Ivey.
And I'll tell you this: what are we going to ask Mike Brown about? Hey, what are we going to ask Mike Brown about? We're going to ask Mike Brown about being on the Warriors championship coaching staff and how cool it is to win his how many rings.
You're going to ask him about getting De'Aaron Fox and Domantas Sabonis to click and to play defense and to improve. First question that's going to be asked is improving the worst defense on the planet.
First question is going to come with Coach, congrats on your championship with the Warriors.
No, that's going to be the first, second, third, fourth, fifth question. But unfortunately for you, the Warriors Celtics are. We're done.